Hello learners, in this video we'll discuss about the types of constructors in Java. There are two types of constructors in Java based on the parameters. The first type of constructor is a default constructor and the second type of constructor is a parameterized constructor. The default constructor of a class does not have any parameters, so it can also be called as a no argument constructor or a zero argument constructor. In case if a class is not defined with any constructors, the Java compiler will automatically create a default constructor for the class. This is the syntax for creating a default constructor. So the default constructor of the class has no arguments. It has the same name as a class name and it does not have a return type as per all the properties. And how this default constructor will be invoked is whenever you create an object for a class with zero number of arguments, that is no arguments. In this case, the default constructor of the class will be invoked. The next type of constructor is a parameterized constructor. The parameterized constructor has one or more than one parameters. It is useful in the cases when the object need to be initialized with different values as required by the user. This is a syntax for the parameterized constructor. Here in this example, the parameterized constructor is defined with two integers as an argument. And during invocation, whenever you create an object with two integers, that is 5 and 10 here are integer numbers. So whenever the object is created and in the object creation syntax for the constructor, this constructor is also involved in the object creation, right? So when the constructor takes two integers as arguments, then this will invoke the parameterized constructor of the class that has two integers as arguments and the object will be initialized with these values. Now I'll explain you the working of the default and the parameterized constructor with an example. I'll show you the demo using the online compiler. Now let us consider create a class called as rectangle. I wish to calculate the area of the rectangle. For this purpose, I need two parameters, length and breadth. So let me declare the instance variables as length and breadth. So to calculate the area of the rectangle, we need some values to be initialized for length and breadth. So for initialization purpose, let me define a constructor here. Let us first explore about the default constructor. So I am creating a constructor with no arguments and the same name as a class name. So we define it as a default constructor. Following the default constructor, inside the default constructor, I didn't give any values to length and breadth, just I am leaving it empty. And following this default constructor, I am defining a method called as area. So in this area method, I wish to print the values of length, breadth. Length value will be printed. And following this, I wish to print the breadth value that is initialized. And printing the breadth value. Okay, then we'll calculate the area and display. So area of rectangle. So the formula is length into breadth, right? So I'll do length into breadth here. The calculation is done here in system.out.println itself and printed. Simple, this is the class structure. We have defined the two variables length and breadth. We have defined we have created a default constructor with no arguments and nothing is initialized here. And following that, we have defined the method called as area. Okay, so let us see what happens during the execution of this code. Before that, we have to create an object for the rectangle class. So let me create the object of the rectangle class as this. Okay, so since it is a default constructor with no arguments here, in the object creation also, the constructor must not have arguments. So in this case, what happens is, during the object creation, what happens is, we have created an object called as the OB, right? So at this point of time, the default constructor is called. Okay, so because here also in the object creation, we told that in the properties already that the constructor of the class will automatically be called when the object is created. So this is where the object is created in this line. So here this invokes a default constructor. So during the invocation of the default constructor, what happens is, so an object, this is an object creation line, right? An object called as OB will be created. Okay. So say an object. This OB is the object for the class called as rectangle. What are the instance variables of the rectangle class? Length and breadth, right? So for storing that length and breadth, the object will contain the memories for length and breadth. Okay, and OB will be the reference variable pointing to this object memory that is created. Since we are using the new keyword is used to create the memory for the object. It's done. Now, once this default constructor is invoked, the default constructor here does not give any value for length or breadth. That is, it didn't give length is equal to 2 or breadth is equal to 3. No values are defined here. So in this case, what happens is, the default constructor will initialize the instance variables with its default values. The default values will vary according to the type of data. In case of integer, the default value will be 0, and if it is a float, the default value will be 0.0f. If it is a boolean variable, the default value will be false. And if it is a string type of variable, since string is a class, the string variable will be holding the default value as null. Okay, so all the object means it will hold the default value as null. Integer means it will hold the default value as 0. So in our case, what happens is, now the OB is initialized with the values 0 and 0, since I didn't define any values given here. Now, following this, if you call the area method, so just give ob.area. Since area is a method of the rectangle class, it have to be invoked by using the object of the class. So object of the class rectangle is ob. So I'm invoking the method as ob.area. Since the area method is called by using the object named as ob, so whatever the content that is initialized in the ob's memory will be used for area calculation. Okay, so what happens here is, it will print, expected output is, it will print length as 0, breadth as 0, because area method is called. Inside the area method, 3 print statements are there, system.out.println. So since the default constructor initializes the values of length and breadth with its default values, since it is an integer, default value of integer is 0, expected output is, it will print length is 0, breadth is 0, area of rectangle is 0 into 0, that will also be 0. Okay, so let us run this program. So as expected, you have got the length is 0, breadth is 0, and the area of rectangle is 0. Okay, so in case you wish to give the values for length and breadth inside this default constructor, so let me take that length value initialized as 5 and let the breadth value be initialized as 10 something. Okay, so now for the same program, again it is a default constructor program only, because here the constructor does not have arguments, and in the object creation also we are calling the constructor without arguments. So in this case, what happens here in this memory location is, for the object there is change in the values. The values are now initialized to, as given here, length is 5 and breadth is 10. So now what will be the change in the output? Length value will be printed as 5, breadth value will be printed as 10, and area of rectangle is length into breadth, that is expected to be printed as 50. Okay, so when you call ob.area, so these 3 statements will be printed. Let us execute it once again and check the output. Yes, as we said, so length is initialized as 5. So ob.area will print what is the length value that is available with ob's memory, that will be taken and it will be printed. Okay, so that is why length is printed as 5, breadth is printed as 10, and area of rectangle is length into breadth. This is how the default constructor works. Okay, so in case if you didn't give these initialization statements, it will default values will be given to the instance variables. Okay, so if you choose to give your own values, you can just give it here. And next, we'll change the same program for a parameterized constructor. A parameterized constructor should accept one or more arguments should be given to the constructor. That is called a parameterized constructor, right? So, during the object creation, you can give the values. Okay, so when you give the value two integer numbers here, automatically you should define a constructor here with the two int values. So int a comma int b, and whatever the value 10 or 20 or whatever that you pass it here while creating the object, that is assigned to here. We told that the constructor will be invoked during the creation of the object. So at this point of time, the constructor of the class will be invoked. So the matching constructor here is, since we have passed two integer as argument, the constructor that takes two integer as an argument will be called. Okay, so the 10 value will be passed on to the variable a. The value 20 will be assigned to the variable called as b. And now this a and b in turn should be assigned to length and breadth. Okay, so this is what the change that I have done in the program. Just I have changed the number of parameters and the assignment. Instead of constant variables, I will pass the variable that is being passed during the object creation. So 10 and 20 will be passed on to a and b, and a contains 10, right? That 10 will be assigned to length here. Since b contains 20, this 20 is passed to the second argument, right? Called as b. So since b contains 20, 20 will be assigned to the variable, instance variable called as breadth. Okay, then no other changes are done. Just I've changed the parameter and I've changed here. I've given two values here. That's it. We'll compile the program. So what is the expected output now is, now the OB value is initialized with length as 10 and breadth as 20. Okay, so OB object is now, we are using the parameterized constructor. We have initialized with 10 and 20. So what is the expected area? 10 into 20, which is 200. Okay, so let us discuss now about, we'll compile the program and check what will be the output. Okay, I'm compiling the program now. When executed, you can find that as OB is initialized with 10 and 20 by using this parameterized constructor, and you are calling ob.area, right? Now, what are the values that OB is initialized with now? Length as 10 and breadth as 20. That values are printed here. The first line, it will print length as 10 as initialized in the OB's memory. OB is the name of the object, and breadth value is 20, and the area of rectangle is 10 into 20, which is equal to 200. Okay, so this is what the two types of constructors in Java is explained with a demo. Hope you understood the concept of constructors, the properties of constructors, and the types of constructors. Thank you all.